The Battle of Kinshasa, when Zimbabwe went to war in the Congo, August 1998. Kinshasa was under threat. The capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo was home to millions of people. But now, an advancing rebellion was threatening to tear the country apart. President Laurent Kabila was struggling to hold onto power. His enemies were advancing, and the war was moving closer to the capital. Then something unexpected happened. Foreign soldiers began arriving in Kinshasa. They came from Angola, they came from Zimbabwe, and they were preparing to fight. Because if Kinshasa fell, the government could fall with it. On the 2nd of August 1998, rebellion broke out against Laurent Kabila's government. The conflict quickly became much larger than an internal Congolese uprising. Rwanda and Uganda became involved on the side opposing Kabila. Angola, Zimbabwe and Namibia would eventually support the Congolese government. The fighting spread rapidly. Then came a dangerous development. Rebel forces seized Katona on the western side of Congo. For Kabila, this was a nightmare. The war was no longer far away. The road toward the capital was opening. Kinshasa was now in danger. Kabila needed allies. He turned to countries in the Southern African Development Community. Zimbabwe answered. President Robert Mugabe authorized military intervention. Zimbabwe's operation became known as Operation Sovereign Legitimacy. For the politicians, it was about defending a government and protecting regional security. But for the men being sent into Congo, it meant something much more immediate. They were leaving home and entering a war. Zimbabwean forces began arriving around Njili Airport, Kinshasa's major international airport. The airport was more than a place where aircraft landed. It was a strategic gateway to the capital. If the rebels captured it, bringing reinforcements into Kinshasa would become far more difficult. Zimbabwean soldiers established positions. Aircraft were prepared. Armor moved into place. And around them was a city that knew a battle was coming. The soldiers had arrived to defend Kinshasa, but they did not yet know how intense the fighting would become. The rebel offensive continued. The threat to Kinshasa became increasingly serious. By late August, fighting was breaking out around the capital. The city was becoming increasingly dangerous. There was confusion. Government forces were trying to identify rebel positions. Civilians were caught between opposing forces. And the defenders knew one thing. If the airport fell, Kinshasa could become almost impossible to defend. Then, the fighting exploded. Gunfire erupted across parts of Kinshasa. Government forces engaged rebel fighters. Zimbabwean troops joined the defense. The battle was no longer happening somewhere else in Congo. It was happening inside the capital, around strategic positions, around roads, around the airport, and among civilians. The fighting became chaotic. Smoke rose above the city. Weapons fire echoed through the streets. And the defenders were fighting for every position that could keep the rebels from taking control. But Zimbabwe had another weapon, one that could strike far beyond the reach of its infantry, its air force. Zimbabwean aircraft were used to support the government side. Air power became an important part of stopping the rebel advance. Ground forces could hold positions, but aircraft could strike enemy forces and armored vehicles before they reached the capital. The battle was becoming a combined fight. Soldiers on the ground, aircraft above them, and Kinshasa caught in between. The rebel advance began to lose momentum. The forces defending Kabila were gaining breathing room, but the battle was not yet decided. The defenders began pushing back. Zimbabwean and Angolan intervention had changed the balance of the battle. The government side regained important positions. Kabila remained in power, and the capital did not fall. For Zimbabwean soldiers, the immediate mission had been achieved. Kinshasa had survived. But there was a problem. The war itself had not ended. It was spreading, and the soldiers who had arrived expecting to defend a capital were about to discover something much bigger. The Battle of Kinshasa did not end the Second Congo War. Instead, it marked the beginning of Zimbabwe's much deeper involvement. Zimbabwean forces would remain in Congo. The fighting would move beyond the capital. New battlefields would emerge, and the military situation would become increasingly complicated. The men who had arrived to defend Kinshasa were now part of a much larger war. A war involving several African armies. A war over territory, power, and survival. And for Zimbabwe, the next battlefield was waiting. Kinshasa had survived. The rebels had failed to take the capital,